But God willing, we're going to go into depth of it. Not only we're going to a depth of it, actually, we're going to see the difference, the way it's explained in simple terms, and the way Kabbalistic books explain it. We really see a huge difference. The way the Torah is explained in simple terms, which is true, nothing wrong with it. Nobody ever says, God forbid, the simple explanation is like lacking anything. But then we're going to see how Kabbalah explains it. So this week's portion talks about the sending of the spies. The Jews were on the verge of entering land of Israel. The Torah says it would take them another 11 days to get in there. So something gets into their mind, and they come to Moshe, they said, listen, the Torah doesn't say exactly why. The Torah just says they came to Moshe and they said, send spies in front of us to figure out what's the easiest way to conquer the land. And then the Nachmanides, the Ramban says, you can't really take miracles and say, I'm going to do something, God is going to save me. Yeah, God could make miracles, but we cannot rely on a miracle. We have to do everything in a natural way. If God wants to make a miracle, he'll make the miracle. So they say when you go into a land, there's always, potholes, and there's, I don't know, places that you might get lost. So therefore, in order to know what's the best and the easiest way to conquer the land, you got to send spies. And they check out what's the best way to conquer the land. Right? So then Moshe agreed. Why not? So what happens is they send the spies. And once the spies are sent, they come back. So Moshe says, go and bring us report. What's the easiest way to conquer it? When they come back, there were like 12 spies. 10 of them bring a very evil report. They said, land of Israel is not for us. They said, wherever we went, people are very strong. There are giants there. It says, Eretz ohelet yoshveha. It's a land that consumes its people, which simply it means people were dying. When we went there, people were dying. And this land must be polluted. Why is everybody dying wherever we went? So actually, Rashi says God was kind and he caused it to happen. So the people that lived in the land of Canaan, the old Israel, they were so busy mourning for their dead that they wouldn't even notice these Jews that came as spies. But then they used it actually as a bad report. It's a polluted land. To such an extent that they came and said, if you look inside, it says, "Va'anoshim asher alu imo." This is in verse 31. People that went up, with Yeshua and Caleb, these were the two good spies, Caleb and Yeshua. Amru, they said, Lo nuchal la'alot olam. There's no way that we can go and conquer the land of Israel, ki chazak hu mimenu, because they are stronger, mimenu. Mimenu could have two terminologies. They're stronger than us, meaning the Jewish army. There's no way we can conquer them. Also, mimenu means from him. And Rashi brings actually the words of rabbis in the Midrash that the spies said they're even stronger than him, than God. Even God can't save us from their hands. That's what the spies said. So obviously you have to know, what do we know from the story? That's number one. Number two, how could they come along and they said they're stronger than us? And the question is, even let's say if the spies, whatever reason they came and they brought this bad report, how were they able to convince the Jews? The Torah says that the Jews actually cried. And they said, we would rather die in the desert than going into the land of Israel, being killed by our enemies. Better to die here. So that's why God said, okay, they spied the land for 40 days. It took 40 days to go to the end of Israel and come back. So God says, you wish to die in this desert, you will all die in the desert. Every day that you spy the land, you're going to stay in the desert 1 year. So that's why they were in the desert for 40 years. So that's what happens. The question is, how were they able to convince the Jews that the nation is even stronger than God? You see, the Jews saw the miracle of God when they came out of Egypt. They saw how God destroyed the Egyptian army. Now, what did they eat in the desert? We all know the man came every day. They saw the miracle of God, that man came down. What did they drink? There's no wells in the desert. So the famous story, the Torah actually talks about it. There was the well of Miriam, which means for the merit of Miriam, as long as she was alive, there was actually a rock, that there was a well in there, traveling with them, that they actually were able to drink water from there. What? Rock, yeah. Forgive my accent. There was a rock. So there was like water in there, and when Miriam died, so it disappeared, but then for Moshe's sake, it came back, as long as they were in the desert. More than that, the Medrash says the Jews really were not just limited to the man. When they wanted the man to taste like anything, it tasted like whatever they wanted. Seriously. Kebab, Juja kebab, sushi. I don't know if they know what sushi is those days. Whatever they wanted, it would taste like. It would definitely taste like adasi, right? But and also the water tasted like any drink that they wanted. And the Torah says that the desert that it went through is a desert full of snakes. How do you know they were full of snakes? The Medrash tells us when they were traveling, the clouds would kill all the snakes, the clouds that are surrounding the Jews. They would see these thick, huge snakes dead in the desert. So the people that saw the miracle of God that morning, I could actually believe what the spies said. Right? So we're going to go, we had three questions. What did we learn from the story of the spies, right? Number two, the question that we had, how could the spies bring such a bad report? What was wrong with them? And then question number three, how were they able to convince the Jews and the Jews believed them? They cried, we would rather die in the desert. So you see, actually, we're going to compare the Kabbalistic answer and the simple answer. That honestly, the simple answer doesn't answer all the questions. According to the simple answer, and honestly, has a great lesson for us. It says the spies made up this entire story. None of it was true. They knew they're lying. They could have joined the Democrats. Seriously, they knew they were lying. But what these 12 spies, 10 of them that brought the bad report, they were leaders of the Jews in the desert. They knew once they go into Israel, I'm saying, so then over there they're going to do elections and they will not be the leaders anymore. They're going to lose their power. So they said, what are we going to do that we should stay in power? So I said, we got to do something not to go into the land of Israel. You have to stay in the desert. Everything was taken care of, They had the money, they had the water. So they came up and they concocted and made up the story that the land is polluted, people are too strong, a bunch of, giants there. There is no way that we can conquer it. Even God can't save us. So the Midrash doesn't tell us how the people believe the spies. It seems to be very stupid to believe them, but at least it says what their motives were. They wanted to stay in power. Right? That's going to the simple terminology. So see, one of the things that we learn from here is, you see, there's sometimes we do things, for the community, for our family, for whatever it is. So we have to know what the goal is, what the purpose is. As long as we see the purpose, no destruction will happen. The moment the person will stick himself into this, what do I gain from this? Or if I do this project, what may I lose? What's a possibility of my loss? I put myself into it, that's where the destruction starts to happen. Imagine you go to a synagogue, right? Synagogue is a place that is supposed to give service to people. I don't mean physical service, eating, drinking. I don't mean that. That obviously comes foremost for their spiritual needs. So I'm here to give service like any other business. God forbid, synagogue is not a business. But everybody says every business, customer service is the main thing. You give customer service, that's your job. Your job is not to take advantage. When you come to a synagogue, obviously the purpose is that you're here to serve the people, whatever needs they have. Spiritual, sometimes physical. Sometimes the people that God forbid don't even have enough money to pay their rent. So as a community, it's our obligation to help, and it's a merit to help. But imagine the rabbi of the synagogue or the board members of the synagogue will say, I don't care what you guys like. Whatever I want, it goes. Either do it or leave. So honestly, that's the beginning of the destruction of that shul. Whenever politics gets in there, that everybody wants to push his agenda, that's the beginning of the destruction of the shul. That's one thing that we learn from the story of the spies. If they would have cared what's God's will, what's better for the Jewish people, to stay in the desert or go in the land of Israel? If they know that nobody wants to live in the desert, come on. You want to have your own house, live like a normal human being. If they would have looked at it, what does God want from us? What's more beneficial for the Jewish people, they would have never made this report. But they looked at themselves, what do I gain? What do I lose? I'm not going to be a leader anymore. So let's make up a story. And like that, they destroyed the whole generation. Everybody died in the desert. And actually, the sad thing is we might not know this part. In the summer when Tisha B'Av comes, right? You're actually mourning, no weddings for 3 weeks or whatever, at least for 9 days. On Tisha B'Av for the past, 1900 years, we are fasting. Why do we fast on Tisha B'Av? So the main reason that we all know is because that's when the two temples got destroyed, right? The first temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar on Tisha B'Av, and the second temple got destroyed by the Romans, whatever, a few hundred years later, same night as Tisha B'Av. But these came later on. Reason number one why we fast is because the spies came back the night of Tisha B'Av. When the date that it came back was the night of the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. And they started crying, we don't want to go to the land of Israel. So God made a decree on our fathers, you will all die in the desert. It was a tragedy. So we fast for that. That's reason number one. The destruction of the temples came later, once they entered the land of Israel after those 40 years. So this is again simple reason of it, but the problem is this doesn't explain how could the Jews believe the spies. So the spies cared about themselves, but the Jews said, "What nonsense! Every day God is making miracles. What do you mean God can't even save us?" So you see, because of that, Kabbalah comes with a new idea, and actually will explain to us that the spies were not wicked people, the way the Medrash explains it. Although again the Medrash is true in simple terminology, they were not good people at all. But according to a study of Kabbalah, they were actually righteous people. And they really meant it well. The reason why they didn't want to go to the land of Israel, because they had a very spiritual life in the desert. The Medrash says, what did they do? Food came from heaven. The water came from the rock, right? Of the well of Miriam. Now, the Torah says later on that your clothing didn't decay on your body. What do you mean? That means they didn't have to change their clothes. How is that possible? So the Medrash says when a kid was born, the parents made his onesies, what do you call that? You know what onesies are? I never knew what it is until I got it for my first child. And we went shopping from Sears, all of Shalom. There's no more Sears. They all closed down. You have to Kaddish for them, in this business. But I remember we used to go, Sears was the store those days. So you buy, these little onesies for the kids. It actually grew with them. And while they were walking, it says that the clouds, they did dry cleaning on their clothes while they were wearing their clothes. You could have a car wash sitting in your car, but could a guy have a dry cleaning while he's wearing his clothes? There's no such thing. I think somebody's ringing the bell, if I'm not making a mistake. But anyways, the Jews at that time, while they had their clothes on, this was a miracle of God that the clouds dry cleaned their clothing. So tell me, if the food was prepared, if they had water, what did they do the whole day? Didn't they get bored? So the answer that they give is they actually studied about God the entire day.
Weren't they walking the whole time?
Well, they had 38 trips. No, I'm sorry, 42 trips during the 40 years that were in the desert. That means they practically traveled once a year. There were some times that they traveled 4 or 5 times in a year. And there were times that they sat somewhere for 8 years.
They would travel and pause for a little bit.
Yeah, right. But they only had 42 trips during the 40 years. So what did they do? They were really studying the Torah. They had a very spiritual life. If they would go into the land of Israel, there would be no more man, no more water. So if they want to eat, they have to go plow and plant. Basically 9 to 5 job. You got to work every day. If they want water, there was no plumbing. So they had to go, dig wells to get water. The clothes doesn't grow with them. No free dry cleaning anymore. They're going to have really a life that more than 50% of it might go just to make a living, to make a parnasa. So they said, why should we go to the land of Israel? We have it good here. And they were not lazy that, they want to live off welfare. God is giving everything for free. No, they wanted to dedicate their life to godliness. I don't want to be involved in business. I want to have a day that is fully involved and infused with God's knowledge. That's what they wanted. And actually, with this, Kabbalah explains a very interesting statement in the Torah. In the Torah says, when the spies came back, they said, land of Israel is Eretz Ochelet Yoshveha. It's a land that eats or consumes its inhabitants. Now, what does it mean? So Rashi says, we saw people dying all around. Everywhere we went, people were dying. So Ochelet means it kills. The Torah doesn't use the word killing. It says the land was consuming its people. They said it's a diseased land. Everybody's dying, right? And Rashi says God did it to distract the people of Canaan. Kabbalah says no, it doesn't mean it's killing the people. What happens when you eat something? It becomes you. The food that you eat becomes part of your flesh and blood. When they said land of Israel eats its own people, it means that we're going to become physical people. We become physical just like the land. As long as we're in the desert, we don't become physical people because we're involved in spirituality. You go to the land of Israel, you have to get a job 9 to 5. So then when you have time to study Torah, you become part of the land. You become physical. So the land consumes us. you become physical just like the land. So this was actually their beautiful intention. We're going to see what was wrong with it. It wasn't that they were lazy. It's not that they were thinking they're going to lose their, I don't know, authority. No more leaders in the new generation once they come into the land of Israel. None of that. They actually wanted to be spiritual people. So the question is, why was God so angry at them? That very good intention. And God said, everybody's going to die in the desert. And that's what Tisha B'Av happens, that every year we mourn because we lost so many people. So see, actually here, to understand what was wrong with their attitude, we're going to get into a big discussion. I'm sure you guys have heard the book of Derech Hashem, Path of God, right? From the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Lutzato. So he has a whole chapter in the beginning. What's the purpose of creation? So there's a very big argument between him and the Hasidic philosophy, although they're both very holy. According to him, God created the world because God is the ultimate good. And the nature of a good person is to share his goodness with others. Now, since God is the ultimate good, he wants to share his goodness with others. Now, what's the ultimate good? God himself. So he created us to give us a chance to be attached to him. But since God didn't want us to be embarrassed, give us everything for free, then we become freeloaders, right? And we're going to be embarrassed. So put us in a world that there's a challenge. We could do a sin. We could do a mitzvah. We choose to do a mitzvah, then we deserve to be connected to God. According to him, basically, the whole purpose of creation was for us to become perfect. God wanted to make us perfect. He wanted to create human beings that could be attached to God. Why did God want that? Because God is good, and the nature of good person is to share his goodness, doesn't keep anything for himself. So God being the ultimate good, he wanted to give himself to us, to be attached to him. Right? But he didn't want us to be embarrassed, so to speak. You're not freeloaders in Persian, mofkhor. You're not mofkhors, right? So therefore he gave us Torah, mitzvah, challenges. We could do a sin, we could do a mitzvah. If I choose to do a mitzvah and make myself perfect, then I deserve to be connected to God. Hasidic philosophy argues, it's based on a medrash. The medrash says, I'm not here to get my perfection. I'm here to serve God. And the medrash says that God had a purpose in creation. His purpose was, he wanted, we don't know why he wanted it. We have no idea why God wanted such thing. Just like we can't understand God, we can't understand his desires either. It's above us. But we know one thing, that he wanted to create a very dark world. Dark, I mean like void of spirituality. And he made us his partners. And he says, I wanted to make the world a dwelling place for me. What's the dwelling place? When you buy a house, you're going to go into the house with your entirety. You don't buy a house to put your furniture and your television and your tables there, but you're going to sleep in your car. You know what I'm saying? You're there with your entirety. You yourself feel very comfortable in your own house, right? Even things that you're embarrassed to do outside, you do inside your house. Because it's fully for you. You're there with your entirety. So God created a world that's very, very dark. And then what happened, he told us, I'm putting you in charge, human beings in general, Jews in particular. By doing good deeds, we actually elevate the world, we make it a dwelling place for God. Now, the example that Kabbalah brings, imagine you have this terrible house in Compton or whatever, Watts, Skid Row, whatever it is, all the garbage, right? And then the king, instead of wanting to go to Beverly Hills, he says, I want to have a house in Skid Row, whatever, in Compton. I want to have it in downtown LA where you have all the homeless, right? But you have to make it presentable for the king. So you get a building, you got to clean it up from all the dirt, and then you bring the furniture for the king. You can't bring the furniture when there's dirt all around. So how do we clean the world from dirt, from the darkness? No sins, right? Evil, whatever the sin is, between me and another Jew, between me and God, being cruel, or I don't know, doing adultery, whatever these things are. I don't do the sin. So I clean up the place from all the bad drugs, so to speak. But then when I do mitzvot, every mitzvah that I do, I actually elevate that physical thing that I do the mitzvah with to a higher level. So not sinning is cleaning up the world from the dirt, but no evil. When you put on tefillin, you elevate your arm, you elevate that tefillin, so to speak. When you write a Sefer Torah, you know the skin of the cow becomes holy. When you buy a house, the first thing you do, you put a mezuzah, you elevate your entire house. When you go to your business, for example, you run a business or you're a professional, When you do your business the way God wants, you bring godliness into your business. It's not no more a business. It's actually a godly business. And let's say you guys are in the professional world when you deal with non-Jews, and they're going to say, how come these guys are so nice? They're different. This doctor cares about us. Why is this businessman so honest and caring? Oh, because he's a Jew, studies Torah. So you actually bring God's holiness even amongst the non-Jews. That's why we say Jews are light to the world. So like that, you make this dark world into a dwelling place. So the purpose of creation was not to only make myself perfect. It's not for me to go hide in a cave and just attach myself to God. That's part of it. But my job is to go into the world and elevate the world, actually make it a dwelling place for God. Make it a house that God feels comfortable to reveal himself in there. Go ahead.
Does this necessarily contradict Ramchal's view? I mean, it sounds to me like
It's different.
you can do right. So this is a different opinion of what's the essential reason. Like
Right. According, even we agree, even Chabad Chassidus agrees to Ramchal that God is going to make you perfect, but that's a reward. That's not a purpose. My purpose is to do will of God. I'm not here for myself. I'm not here to make myself perfect. I'm here to serve God, to do God's will. As a reward, God will give me, make me perfect. But I'm here to do His will, not for myself.
that's like a greater like purpose.
Exactly. According to Hasidic philosophy, again, Ramchal is not wrong. Don't get me wrong.
So he
The
would
guy,
only say one.
the guy was a holy man. He looked at one point of view, and many rabbis say that until the first Rebbe of Chabad came, and he said, "No, I'm here for a higher goal, not for my perfection. I will get my perfection, but that's a reward that God will give me. But that's not why I'm here."
Whenever you say my perfection, does that mean like self-actualization?
That means you make yourself a godly human being. You make
reach your potential.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. All right. So then, this was the mistake of the Jews. They said, "You want to stay in the desert. You want to study Torah, be away from the world, just to make myself perfect, nothing else." God said, "No. The purpose is to go in the land of Israel." When they went to the land of Israel, they had plants, right? They were planting things, but they give 2% to the Kohen, they give 10% to the Levi, they give 10% to the poor. This is the part that Biden and Obama love. The taxes, 2% to Kohanim, 10% to Levim, 10% you take to Jerusalem, you eat with everybody, 10%, to the poor. Basically, you got to give 22% of your. I'm not talking about charity of money, but if you make produce, if you have a field, you have to give 22% to charity. God is a lot more generous than Biden and Obama. They take like what 38%, 33%. God says only 22%. But again, that's the job. You go there, and when you have these plants growing, it's not mine. I share it with others. That was the mistake that the spies had. So far, clear. They were not wicked people. They had very good intentions. So now let's go further. How could they come with the idea and say that even God can't save us? And all the Jews believed it. You saw so many miracles happening. So you see, the thing is like this. They thought, we believe in miracles, but as long as you have a supernatural life, when you go to the land of Israel, God is going to say everything is going to be natural. No more man, no more miracles, none of those. So it says, as long as we lived in the desert, we were above nature. Yeah, of course, God could do whatever He wants, destroy the snakes, get them on for us. But God Himself said, "You're going to go to the land of Israel, no more miracles, no more man, no more the water. You got to go plant." Oh, if you have to live according to laws of nature, nature says that a stronger army destroys a weaker army. We don't have to go to war. Jews were not warriors. So I mean, what could Moshe tell them? Hey, God made miracles in the desert? Of course, because we lived a supernatural life. But if you tell me, hey, no more miracles, just go into the land of Israel and conquer the land, it's impossible. Even God can't save us. Because God Himself made the limitations of the world according to laws of nature. Stronger army wins a weaker army. So it seems to be they're very logical. What was their mistake then? That God really got so angry. So see, here Kabbalah goes to another explanation. We have nature. We have supernatural, but God actually is even above supernatural things. Let's explain that. You see, nature is whatever we see. There's limits, right? When a miracle happens, God breaks nature. For example, when the Red Sea split in half, the nature of water is to go down. Suddenly, at that time, the water stood like a wall. So that's not natural, that's supernatural. right? But again, there's limitations in infinity too, because there's actually a statement from one of the big Sephardi Kabbalists. Just like God has power in infinite, He must have power in finite too. Because if you're going to say God is only infinite, then God is lacking the power in finite. So God has to have both. So if let's say God only does supernatural things that breaks nature, it shows how God is above nature. But actually, God is even above that. He could make supernatural things in a natural way. He could combine them both together. Sounds a little bit philosophical. In other words, a miracle will happen, but it doesn't look like a miracle. It actually has the clothing of nature. That's where the spies made a mistake. They thought there's only two ways. Either you have a natural life, no miracles, nothing. In that case, a superior army will destroy a weaker army, or you could have a supernatural life that breaks nature. But to go to the land of Israel in a natural way, and then the weak is gonna win the what do you call it? It's gonna win the stronger one. That cannot happen because they didn't realize that there's a way that God makes a miracle, but it doesn't break nature at all. One of the best examples for that is the story of Purim. You see, when we left Egypt, correct, at that time, nature was broken. The 10 plagues, all the waters turned into blood. Suddenly you have swarms of frogs attacking the Egyptian. You have lice going all over. All the wild animals come. These are supernatural stuff, right? Nature was broken. But do you guys see any miracles in the story of Purim? If you don't go deep into it, there was no miracle. It happens that there was a beautiful girl with the name of Esther. The king falls in love because he was such a pervert king, that only loved physical beauty. And Esther happens to be the most beautiful girl, gets married to Esther. And it happens, okay, when Haman came out to be the prime minister, Esther, our sister, was a Jewish queen. So she had the power to convince her husband. There was no miracle, right? But if you look actually, it says that was one of the greatest miracles. Because just think, Achashverosh, is that normal? He makes a party for 7 days. He gets drunk and he asks his wife Vashti to come and dance. Now she was a queen. Come on, I'm not a dancer. She's not a club dancer to come and dance in front of people. So she had dignity, says, no, I don't want to come dance. Achashverosh goes crazy and kills her. Is that normal? No. But God let it happen. Then for 4 years, she's looking for a queen. Must have the most beautiful girl. So she had, the whole whatever, what do you call it? A whole house that every day another girl came and he looks at her, no, you're not beautiful enough until Esther comes. Right? As out of all the women. And Esther tried to hide herself. She didn't want to marry a non-Jew. She was not successful. Correct. Then afterwards, another few years passes by, and Haman comes out to be the prime minister. These are not, natural things. They look like nature, but you could see was plan of God that a king goes crazy and he wants his wife to come and dance. And then the only girl that's so beautiful is Esther. Obviously, these are real miracles, but it has clothing of nature, has the facade of nature. So this is how great, power of God is, that it could create a miracle, but it doesn't even look like a miracle. And that was a mistake of the spies. We could live in nature, and according to laws of nature, there is no hope. But in a way of nature, actually, you're going to see that a miracle will happen. That was the mistake of the spies. That's what I thought God can't help them. That was their mistake. Anyways, the great lesson that we learn from this is that our job is not here. We're not only here to make ourselves perfect. The Jews were in the desert for a few years, but that gave them enough power to go into the land of Israel and transform it to a holy place. You see, as a single guy, right, especially let's say a religious family, the kids go to yeshiva for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years until they graduate, right? And they go for a year or two to Israel. So they become full of Torah. But once they come back, the purpose is not just to sit and study Torah the whole day. Even people that are in kollel the entire day, they just don't learn themselves. They dedicate their night hours to teach others. So the other people that can't study Torah the whole day, they actually know what's wrong and what's right, and they do good deeds in the world. No one ever says just study for yourself in a cave. Don't help others. Again, being in kollel and learning Torah is great, but even then the Torah says share your knowledge with somebody else. So somebody might say, why should I care about somebody else? I just want to make myself perfect. So we tell him that was a mistake of the spies. They wanted to stay in the desert, study Torah the whole day. They didn't care to make a change in the world. So God says that's not the way. Part of us is to make ourselves perfect, but in addition to that, you have a job to make the world a better world, a higher world. That's the lesson that we learn from this week's Parshat, from Parshat of Shelach. Any questions? Okay, guys, tonight we got a huge